Hello and welcome to Great Britain in Focus. I'm James McCullough.
And I'm Pascal Mary Rakovich. Today we hear of the remarkable story of Mary's Meals, a charity that feeds 1.8 million children a day in 18 of the world's poorest countries.
Magnus MacFarlane-Barrow, the founder and CEO of Mary's Meals, tells us how it all began. Founded in his family's renewed faith, initially providing aid to refugees in the Bosnian War.
He gives a moving testimony of the spirit of generosity he witnesses from so many, and in particular from poorer communities in the UK, as well as the personal impact of his encounters with the poor in Africa.
So let's find out more.
Hi Magnus.
Hi Kevin.
Good to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
Good. So, where are we?
Paisley, not my home, but somewhere I come quite often.
Good. And this is the cathedral?
This is St Mirren's Cathedral, yeah, beautiful church. And it's a great town, Paisley. I really like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where are you going to take me?
I think we're going to have a little stroll over to the Abbey.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Abbey is an ancient one?
I think it's quite ancient. I don't know too much about it, to be perfectly honest.
Well, let's go
find out. Yeah.
So Magnus, you're world famous for Mary's Meals.
I don't think I'm world famous, but Mary's Meals seems to be getting quite well known, certainly.
How many countries are you in now?
Well, we're serving the meals to children in 18 different countries, and then there would be another 15 countries where we have Mary's Meals fundraising organisations, so over 30 countries.
And are they on different continents?
Yes, so most of the fundraising countries are in Europe, but also US, Canada, Australia, and then the countries where we provide the meals, most of them would be Africa. All over Africa, Liberia, South Sudan, Malawi, Zambia, and then in other continents too. Haiti, we have a large project, India, Myanmar. So very spread. They're certainly the biggest ones in Africa.
Yeah. But Mary's Meals is started in Scotland?
Yes, born here back in the early 90s, 1992. Just meant to be a very small one-off effort to help the people who are suffering in Bosnia at that time. And it was very much just a family effort to collect gifts, some basic aid here in Scotland, and drive it to the refugee camps in Bosnia-Herzegovina. That's how it began.
So what year are we talking?
That was 92, November 92.
Yeah.
I took 1 week's holiday I was a fish farmer, salmon farmer.
Right.
Took a week's holiday to drive that aid over there. Came back thinking I'd done my good deed and discovered that God had a very different plan.
It's funny how that happens. I've heard that so often that people think, okay, Lord, I'll do this one thing. But I mean, how did you find out about the war in Bosnia? Were you watching television or press reports?
Yes, we were watching television and reading the press, and many years before, when I was only 15, we'd been to Medjugorje in Bosnia as a family, and that had a big impact on our lives. It had led my mum and dad to turn our home into a Catholic retreat centre, Craig Lodge Family House of Prayer. So we had a kind of link to that part of the world, so it's probably why we had a particular interest in what was happening there, and a particular horror as that war unfolded.
And what was it like driving the truck over? I mean, were you it's quite a distance from Scotland to Bosnia.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back on it now, there was definitely an element of adventure to it as well.
Yeah.
The idea of driving to that part of the world, and a little bit of apprehension too, but it was probably more spirit of adventure.
Did you go with your wife or on your own? Or?
Well, it's how I met my wife. When I first went, I didn't know my wife. She was a nurse and who gave up her job to help the people in Bosnia. And she approached me and asked if I could give her a lift there and introduce her to people in the hospitals.
Right.
And that she ended up becoming my co-driver, and that's how we met. So she's been involved in this mission right from the beginning.
And she's been your co-driver ever since?
Exactly. And actually a much better driver than me, it turns out. She was much better at driving the trucks than
Absolutely.
I was. Yeah.
So you've done your good deed. You come back to Scotland. What happens next?
Well, I came back to discover this mountain of all these gifts, food and clothing and all the basics that people needed in the refugee camps. And so I prayed about it and thought about it and decided to give up my job, which wasn't a massive sacrifice, to be honest. And I sold my house and somebody gave me a truck, and I just began driving back and forth. And I said to God, you know, I'll keep doing this as long as there's a need and as long as people keep giving.
That's wonderful.
But I didn't. When I said that, I thought I might be doing it for a few months or maybe a year. I certainly didn't think it was going to become my life's work.
But how were you supporting yourself?
So initially I had some savings, and I was living back at home then with my mum and dad, and so they were kind of looking after me when I wasn't driving the truck back and forth, and so that made it possible during those early days.
It was a real act of faith, by the sounds of it.
Well, I mean, it really didn't feel like that at the time. I wasn't married then. I didn't have the responsibilities of family, so it didn't seem like such a huge, this big scary decision to make. It didn't feel like that.
Has it felt a bit scary since?
No, most of the time, not really actually. I think definitely something I reflect on as I get older is just how gentle God is. Certainly in my life, when I think what's happened, I think if God had said to me at the beginning, I've got this big thing that's going to happen, I probably would have been scared. I might have run away and hid, but it's always felt like just showing me a little bit at a time, just enough to get through the next day kind of thing. Yeah.
But how did this kind of, so you're driving the truck and backwards and forwards, but things start to expand, right?
So the early years were all about just driving the trucks back and forth and trying to keep up with this avalanche of gifts that kept coming. And I think that was one of the things in the early years that really kind of amazed me the most, was just people's goodness, encountering these incredible acts of charity in this part of the world, all around Glasgow and other parts of Scotland, people just giving what they had. And that's really what just kept us going, almost just trying to keep up with that.
And did you find maybe the people that gave the most were the people that maybe had the least?
Yeah, very much, very much. Noticed that in a very marked way in these parts. We would do things like supermarket collections, where we would invite people to put food in the basket, tinned food, for us to drive to Bosnia, and repeatedly we saw that there was a bigger response in the more deprived parts of Glasgow than there were in the more affluent areas. So there was something very clear going on there. And also something I began to see was that the people who were giving the most were the happiest people. I remember this. Yeah, really? I remember this elderly lady who lost her husband while I knew her, who used to collect all this aid. And I went to her home one time and it was pretty much empty. And I asked her, "Are you moving house?" And she said to me, "No, I just think the people in Bosnia returning to their homes at the moment need these things more than an old lady like me." And she'd systematically given away literally everything in her house. And
it sounds like the widow in the Gospels.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing I remember about her the most was just her joy. She was just like full of joy.
That's really interesting. The most joyful are the biggest givers.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So Magnus, what's this?
This is the Abbey. Would have been an old Benedictine Abbey. Long time since there was a Benedictine Abbey, but an amazing history.
And like most medieval Benedictine monasteries, it would have had a mission to the poor, right?
I'm sure it would have, like all of them. Yeah.
It's kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah, I suppose.
You're a sort of 21st century monastery giving food out to the poor in the world. Shall we go and have a look?
Yeah.
The whole sort of monastic way of the medieval Middle Ages was this kind of, they were a great sort of social service to everybody that lived around them. And the poor did come to the monasteries and they would be fed and clothed and healed and looked after. Now, in practical terms, tell me what Mary's Meals actually does. For somebody watching this that doesn't know anything about it, what do you actually do in Africa?
So it's a very, very simple mission. It's about providing one good meal every day in a place of education to the world's poorest children. so that we do two things at once. We meet the immediate need of the hungry child for food, but at the same time we're enabling them to come into that place of education, to get that education that can set them free from poverty. So something extremely simple, extremely basic, but is the key very often to setting people free from poverty.
So is Mary's Meals specifically geared towards children? Is that its mission?
Yes, it's always about, obviously it's evolved since those early days, but today it is all about children, and very specifically the world's poorest children. Children who might miss school because of hunger. Children who might be working in the fields, who might be begging, who might be just doing whatever they need to do to put the next meal on the table and therefore miss school. There are about 64 million children out of school today in those circumstances.
64 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
So just that promise of a meal every day at school can be enough to bring those children into the classroom.
And how did you start to make those connections with Africa?
Well, 2002, terrible year of famine across southern Africa. We began working in Malawi for the first time, where many millions of people were facing starvation. And we had connections there in the church, people we knew, missionary priests, people who were connected to Medjugorje. And we began working alongside them, just a very simple emergency feeding program. Then I had this amazing encounter with a family in Malawi that year. Local parish priest took me to visit them.
Right.
And the father had died sometime before, and the mother was now dying, and she was lying on the floor with her 6 kids around her.
Really?
And she was called Emma, and she said to us, there's nothing left for me now except to pray that someone's going to look after my children. And then I started talking to her oldest child beside her. He was called Edward, and he was about 14 years of age. And at one point in the conversation, I asked Edward, what's your hopes? What's your ambition?
Yes.
And he looked at me and he said, I'd like to have enough food to eat, and I would like to be able to go to school one day.
Really?
And that was it. That
Wow.
was the extent of his ambition at 14 years of age.
How did that make you feel?
It really made me think again about that link between things that we just take for granted, food and education. The fact that many millions of children in the world, like Edward, are so hungry, that's their priority rather than school, finding food, working for food. And so it was really that conversation that sparked this mission in many ways. And I love that in a way, that the words of a child would have ignited this beautiful thing that's Mary's Meals.
Madonna House is a global lay community founded in Canada but with Russian origins. We speak to one of their members, Joanne Slugocki, based in their house in Yorkshire, who came on pilgrimage here in Walsingham.
Joanna speaks about the spirituality of the community, which runs a house of contemplative prayer and listening, where people come on retreat to deepen their prayer life.
She shares about her own faith journey and the discernment of her vocation. Living and working in the community, she found peace at Madonna House, seeing God leading her in a journey towards joy.
Let's hear her story.
So welcome to our Walsingham studio, Joanne.
Thank you.
Now, I understand that you're new to Walsingham. This is the first time you've been here. What are you up to in Walsingham?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm here with my community, Madonna House, and we're here on a few days of pilgrimage, retreat.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been good.
Tell me about Madonna House. What are you all about?
Madonna House is a community of lay men, lay women, and priests. And we're based, our main center is in Combermere, Ontario, in Canada.
Okay.
And we're founded by a Russian woman named Catherine Doherty.
Okay.
Yeah, so we try to live build a community of love amongst each other and welcome people into that. That's our work, really.
Okay, so but you haven't come straight from Canada. You're based in the UK at the moment?
Yes, that's right. We have a house in Robin Hood's Bay in North Yorkshire.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. I've actually visited them several years ago, so I'm familiar vaguely with that house. So tell me a little bit more about the charism and work that you do in Madonna House. You say that you're a house of prayer and listening.
Yes, that's
so
right.
how does that work in reality?
Okay. Yes, so our house in Robin Hood's Bay is a house of prayer listening house, we call it.
Yeah.
And so people come to deepen their prayer life. Some people come to spend, they spend a few days with us, a week, coming on retreat. And listening, we also have people dropping in for hospitality, for a cup of tea. So we receive people who are really looking to deepen their prayer life. And it's kind of different than your normal retreat because people will come and they join in our schedule.
Right.
So that means our prayers, our meals, maybe our work, depending
washing
on
the dishes.
Yeah, washing the dishes,
Yeah.
maybe digging in the garden, things like that. So very, very simple things. But yeah, depending on their needs. Some people need more solitude and they'll spend time in our prayer cabin. We have it's called Pustynia.
Oh yes.
So it's a Russian word and it means desert. So that's something that Catherine Doherty, a tradition she brought to us from Russia of going into the desert, per se. And so we go in and we just have our Bible and bread and water, time to fast and just be with the Lord.
So it's like it sounds like a life of contemplative prayer.
Yes, it is. Yeah, our life. Yeah, it's interesting that you draw upon that because we are quite active, but all our activity flows from this place of contemplation. Of our foundress called it. Pustynia of the heart. So we go into this place, this cabin, Pustynia, to foster this place of stillness with the Lord interiorly, and through that relationship, through that intimacy with the Lord, we can be active, we can live our life. So yeah.
Okay, good. And tell me a little bit about your own faith journey.
Yeah. So my faith journey, I was really blessed to have two parents who really lived their faith, and it was very important for them to pass it on to their kids. So I grew up Catholic. I think, of course, everybody at some point needs to make their faith their own. So then I realized, okay, well, that it's more than just going to Mass or saying our rosary together as a family, or like, what is the reason for all of this? So I wanted that. I started to get more involved with the community, trying to live my faith. I was blessed to have good friendships growing up too, so that really helped me along in my faith journey. I had the support I needed. I think that's really essential, is the community aspect.
Your peer group.
Yeah, your peer group. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I was blessed with a good peer group. And then in university, it started to get. I feel like I was really on the cusp. I could have gone, a different direction.
Okay.
But I felt, I guess there was a deepening that was missing there. I discovered this opportunity to do a year of youth ministry. So after a couple of years of university, I did that. I spent 9 months where we were trained on how to do youth ministry, lived in a community, and went out and gave retreats to parishes, youth groups.
Okay.
And that was really like a life-giving experience for me. My first experience, I would say, of community life outside of my family, lived community life.
Yeah.
And it was very joyful for me. So that was really good. That year was a deepening in my faith. And then I went and I worked for a year. Then I was like, okay, I have to get serious to figure out what I'm doing. So I went back to university thinking I'm gonna do nursing. I'm gonna, muscle through it. And then that summer I walked the Camino, the Santiago de Compostela in Spain.
Okay.
So it wasn't meant, it wasn't this big, I want to do this to really grow in my faith or anything like that. It was just this seems like a good challenge. I want to do that.
Right. Yeah,
so me and my friend did this, and it was a lot of time to be, still and quiet,
Yes.
And I got in touch again with this place of I don't have joy. What am I?
Right.
What am I going for in my life? And so after that, took us 32 days to do this walking pilgrimage. I went back home and I just quit. I quit my job. I didn't go back to school. And I was I remember hearing about this place, Madonna House, which I didn't really know anything about. I just knew that you could go live there for however, up to a year, from a week up to a year.
Yeah. And
I would be joining in the community in their life, and it would be a good opportunity, I thought, for me to be away from the surroundings, from my normal surroundings.
Right.
And to kind of just reevaluate, what am I doing? But I realized, when the moment came, I remember we pray the rosary after supper together, and we were praying the rosary, and I just felt so much joy and love and peace, and I had felt that throughout my stay. And the contrast when you feel like you're running away from God or wrestling with God or just unpeaceful, it was a huge contrast to finally feeling like peaceful and joy-filled and love. So we're praying the rosary, and then I just feel God wants me here, I think, and then it just all clicked, I feel at home here.
That to me, it sounds like your story is a real story of discernment.
Yeah, I guess. I know, looking back, there was, for a good few years, there was a time where I was doing an hour of adoration every week. And I know that when I was in moments of quiet and I let the fears come away, it was there was this desire within me to live, to give my life to God completely. But there was, so I think there was this awareness, but
Good. I mean, I liken it myself to we all have a shopping list for life.
Yeah.
We have a list of things that we want from life and our expectations, and we hold on to them to a greater or lesser extent in the early years of our life.
Yeah.
And it seems like that God has his own shopping list for us that we may not always be aware of. And it's a gradual process of realization that God's intention is different maybe to what our intention was.
Right, yeah. I think too, but that there's a fear of missing out on your vocation. I know that I've seen that in other young people. My generation's I have to find the right, make sure I keep my eyes open and I'm always at the right retreat or I'm at the right place to meet the right person. But it's looking back, it's wow, God was really moving even when I couldn't perceive him moving at all. And I thought it was just my random, decision to go to this place like Madonna House or do this pilgrimage,
Yes.
But really it's no, he's leading us, He wants that vocation for us even more than we want it, because it's going to bring us the most joy and it's going to bring us the closest to him.
So it's really allowing us to be led, allowing ourselves to be led by being open, but without trying too hard, seeking here and there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gosh, that's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
really sort of opened a few doors, I think, or sort of made very clear what discernment could be for
Yeah.
people of all ages. So thank you very much, Joanna, for speaking to us about
Oh,
that.
you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been good.
Isn't it wonderful to discover how rich our church is with communities that foster a deep personal encounter with God's presence and love?
Yes, and it's our mission to bring you these stories of our living church. So if you'd like to support the work of EWTN in Great Britain, do visit our website on ewtn.co.uk and click Donate.
Thank you for joining us. Full versions of these interviews will be made available across our social media channels soon.
Do join us next time. Until then, goodbye and God bless.